I want my life to be easy. I don't actually give a shit about my data. I know it's out there. Equifax was breached. Target was breached. Home Depot was breached. Like, the list goes on.
You're listening to Protect It All, where Aaron Crow expands the conversation beyond just OT, delving into the interconnected worlds of IT and OT cybersecurity. Get ready for essential strategies and insights. Here's your host, Aaron Crow.
Welcome to the show. Thank you again for listening this week. I'm excited to have my friend Paul on the podcast. This is going to be a fun one because I was just on Paul and Evan's podcast a couple of weeks ago. We recorded. They had bourbon and all the fun things and drawing ideas out of a hat. So if you haven't listened to their podcast, absolutely go over there. Great content, a lot of fun, a lot of amazing discussions and people coming on, guests, etc. So Paul, with that, please introduce us to yourself to the audience and let us know a little bit about you, sir.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me. This is weird to be recording during the daytime. I usually record. It's nighttime. It's late. Like, work is over. Like, so this is a different experience for me. But yeah, to your listeners out there, what's up, everyone? My name is Paul Marco. I am a lifelong cybersecurity professional. Right. As you said, we've been trading podcast appearances. So thank you for that. And this was my turn. Right. And I'm super psyched to be here. You know, funny thing is, we started this podcast. Evan and I started our podcast, Cyber After Hours, because I was basically just bitching one day. I was like, dude, I can't get on a podcast. It's something I've wanted to do forever. You know, I've always wanted to like get out there and like, you know, have these types of conversations. He's like, well, dude, we'll just start one. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And now this is the second one I'm recording that's outside of mine. It's like when it rains, it pours, right?
That's right, man. That's awesome.
So yeah, so a little bit about me. So like I mentioned, lifelong cybersecurity professional. Most of my career has been in cybersecurity operations. So almost entirely focused on things like building detection and response, incident response, cyber threat intelligence, kind of putting all those pieces together, everything that's part of that ecosystem. I love the IAM space. I've run a few different IAM spaces from an ops perspective. I've even delved into things like vulnerability management and app security, although app security is not my strong suit, right? My app security experience is like, hey, smart people, like, what do you need? I'll help you, right? That's it. The other stuff I can play around in, but that's really been it. I've always been the guy that takes all these amazing tools, all the incredible innovations we have in cyber and does something with them, right? That's kind of how I like to explain ops. Is like, all right, we've made all these investments. We spent all this time tuning, loading logs, normalizing, parsing, putting in blocks, right? But now someone's actually got to take that information and do something with it. Those are the spaces I play in.
Well, and that's where the rubber hits the road, right? It's easy. I just got back from RSA. It's easy to go look at RSA or Black Hat or any of these, you know, Gartner, any of these large cyber conferences, or at least conferences that have cyber vendors there, and to see all the cool stuff. I mean, there's literally 1,000 different vendors at RSA, and they all have amazing things. But if you really look at that and you think about it, hey, I'm an asset owner. I've got XYZ problems. I don't need 1,000 solutions to my problems, right?
Right.
I may already have a tool. Maybe I've got some overlap. Am I using my tools correctly? Are my people trained on my tools? Do we have a process to respond? Like, there's a lot of things that beyond just going. And again, I came from being a vendor as well. I was the CTO of a software company. Software and products are good. I'm not bashing the product space, whether it's hardware or software or even services. Like I do services, you know, consulting, but sometimes it's really easy to focus on the FUD and the cool new AI or the new widget or the new capability. Right. And it's just like, okay, are you really running what you have to the best of its ability? Because that's usually the first place I look as a consultant. I'm not your stereotypical, well, you need to rip it out. And, you know, the assessment has red all over it, like my, you know, 9th grade English paper, you know, that just looked like somebody bled on it because I'm so bad at that kind of thing. Right. But, you know, it's foundational things. Like, are you doing well with the things you have? Like, what technology do you have? Are you getting the most out of it before you start upgrading, right? And before you start saying, well, I need this new thing. Because I've seen so many organizations that have bought the latest technology for the past 5 years and they never finish implementing it, or they implement it, but it just sits there and nobody's actually using it. So they're really not getting the value out of those tools. How often do you see that?
Oh my God, preach. I think it was 3 minutes before we got on our first soapbox. This is going to be a good one, right? I'm psyched on. No, look, I 100% agree. I find your ideas intriguing and wish to subscribe to your newsletter. Like the things that you're saying are 100% true. And this is the problem is, and I think part of the issue is like, cybersecurity is born of technology, right? We're all technologists first,
Sure.
right? And then we have to learn technology. We have to learn how those systems work. We have to learn how things are talking. And then we have to figure out the security on top of that, right? So the thing is, as technologists, like we love innovation. We love playing, man. We love getting into the new tech and the new interfaces and pushing the buttons and seeing what things do and right, saying things like, oh, this is cool. But that's the trap, right? The trap is you can start to look at products and be like, I wonder what problem I have that this can solve for me. When anytime you're purchasing tech, it should be, this is my problem. What's in the market that I can use to solve that problem, right? Otherwise, you're just collecting technology. And to your point, like, this is where we start to get like the duplication of capability. Right. I'm a fundamentalist, right? For me, it's never about product. I don't talk about Palo or Cisco or Splunk. I talk about, do I have the ability to block things at the network level? Do I have the ability to search logging? Do I have the ability to contain a workstation? Right. When you break that away, those capabilities away from the product, that's how you build true control. And the thing is, like, these products come with multiple capabilities. So when you buy something for that onesie twosie problem that you have, you might have 6 or 7 other capabilities you haven't enabled. And now you're getting into duplication. That's where folks like you and me can come into an organization and be like, let's do some tech rationalization. We can actually save you some money. We can actually rip some stuff out. Every time I do an engagement, almost every time I'm like, you can turn that off, save some money, and redeploy it to something else. Send your folks to training or invest in this other capability you don't have. Like, that's where we get to like really like see, this is where we get to like show that value just by justifying the things that are in place that were purchased for a real reason.
Yeah, and sometimes simpler is better. Just because, again, to your point, I love Palo, I love Cisco, I love Splunk, I love all of these things. I've got technology behind me, and I'm always tinkering and playing with the newest stuff and AI and building bots and all the stuff. That's fun to me. But I'm doing that in my home lab. There's a reason. So a prime example of this is back in the day, I had a completely, custom built home network. I had pfSense as my firewall, and I had like this hodgepodge of really cool. It had all this functionality. I had custom dashboards. I had all this stuff.
Amazing.
And it worked great until it didn't. And when it didn't, almost 9 times out of 10, I was out of town. And it was so complex that nobody else I'm the only technologist. My kids were small. My wife is not a technologist. So it would go down. And then we had already, cut the cord. So we don't have TV other than streaming. Nice, my kids are like, toddlers. So everything to them is, Disney and streaming on a tablet or whatever. And then now my wife is 3 days without anything to, help in that area. And by the time I get home, she's like pulling her hair out and wanting to punch me. So, I went to a very simplified system. I went to, Ubiquity. Is Ubiquity the best and most and blah, 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 whatever. That's not the point. The point is that it's all through an app. Everything automatically, it's self-healed. It's a mesh. Like, I've got redundancy. I've got battery backups on things. Like, I made it so that it's reliable. It doesn't necessarily meet all of the technology. Now, Ubiquity is really great. They have a lot of capabilities, all that type of stuff. I'm not trying to bash on Ubiquity, but the point is that I had all this cool stuff. It's the same reason why I went to an iPhone. I used to be an Android guy. I went to an iPhone because I can control all of my kids' devices. I know exactly where they are. I could control what apps they have on their phones. Like, it just works. And then I don't have to think about it. Like, the days of me wanting to break down a server and look at a packet capture to troubleshoot my network in the middle of the day, I'm just not there. I do it on my spare time when I want to, but only when I want to, not when I have to.
Yeah. And not because things are out and you got to like figure stuff out. That's Correct. The worst. Right. No, look, I mean, I sat here and said we're all technologists. You just went through your home tech stack, and I'm legitimately worried that the rain is going to cut my internet on my satellite internet here. So it's a little different, right? I guess I'm a technologist at heart, not in practice. Sure. Growing up, we've all done that. Like, I remember I was working early in my career. I was working at a law firm, and they were replacing desktops. And I was like, well, what are you doing with these desktops? I'm like, we're going to recycle them or whatever. I'm like, can I have like 6 of them? And I brought them all home, and I made domain controllers and DNS servers, and like, you just kind of like, set them up and I may or may not have borrowed a Microsoft server license. It's possible. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Allegedly, right? That's how that goes. But no, as a technologist, again, getting back to this point of like cyber and honestly, like part of what makes cyber so complex, like part of the problem, the thing that we have to solve is that we have all these options. We have these like massive, huge, like technical networks, and we have smart people running them. But geez, like those things are living and breathing, right? How do you keep up? Like there's no level of documentation that gets maintained that we can go back and look at and figure these things out. These aren't the clamshells I had under my desk, 20 years ago. These are like these massive, like these massive networks. And then we have to we go out and we buy this tech to make it all simpler, but that adds its own layer of complexity, right? The things we got to solve for. So yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have. Like it keeps people like you and I busy, but it's a problem nonetheless.
Well, the other thing that brings up for me is most of the time now, obviously, if you're in a cyber service, you do cybersecurity as a profession, or you have a cyber, solution services offering hardware, software, whatever. But most organizations, cyber is not their business. Cyber is something that is probably bolted on to protect their critical process, whether that's, financial services, which is banking and all the transactions, or it's a retail environment where, they have physical stores, or it's, a power utility company, or it's a manufacturing facility and they're protecting their intellectual property and whatever those things are. Cyber is usually a cost center. Every time we add something that we're solving a problem, we're also many times adding complexity, or at least, if not adding complexity, changing the way the process, and change is hard. People don't like change, especially at scale.
Right. No, well, so yes, again, that is an absolute issue because the business just wants to do business, right? They just want things to work, right? And the problem is, and this is one of the kind of the age old issues with cybersecurity and cybersecurity professionals, you don't want to hear from me, right? You want me to be there, but if you hear from me, there's a problem, right? Like if we're talking, we have an issue. So, this is like, how do you solve that problem? By demonstrating value, but also being like the guy that's like, no, you don't ever want to see me, right? Because then things are down, there's an issue we have to deal with. And the thing is like, it's like these other products like insurance, right? People have no problem buying insurance and hoping that they never use it. They love throwing that money into a bucket and being like, I hope it's gone forever because I have to use that issue. I've had that issue. But the thing is, like, I don't think we've gotten there with cyber yet, at least not as a kind of a cultural conversation, right? People are still like, do I really have to buy this thing? Am I really going to spend $50,000 on this product, to try to make things better and then just add friction to my business? Like, those are the conversations that make justifying those spends or spending time on the program itself a hard sell, especially in smaller shops where it's really about being lean and running a business. Like, now you want me to recertify access? Get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm not going to wait. No, I need these people working. I'm not going to sit here and have every manager review everyone's access. And by the way, I have no idea what the security group even means, right? Like, these are the things that you and I and your listeners as cybersecurity professionals, these are table stakes for us, right? We don't want people to have expansive access. We don't want folks like, traversing the web in all of its corners without any protections. We don't want endpoints that haven't been managed and have EDR, but all of those things with a cost. They come with a cost, and the cost is either a licensing cost or it's hours, right? It's people, and that's an additional cost as well. So it is a hard sell until there's a breach, right? And this is unfortunately what I've seen time and time again is you have those companies that are split into these two buckets. And bucket one is, I'm not dealing with this. I don't believe in it. I don't care. I'm going to save the money. And then some shit happens, right? And then when things go down, they're like, how could you let this happen? All right, what do we need to do? What do we need to spend? Right. And then there are those proactive companies that understand, not only is it important because you want to maintain that resiliency, the super smart companies have turned this into a marketing element, right? They've turned this into something that actually drives business. Hey, customers, if you're choosing between this competitor and me, here's what I'm spending to protect your data. Here's what I'm doing to ensure that your services are up and you're not going to be stuck on the corner somewhere because, the system didn't work and the data you needed or the service you needed wasn't available. This is why you need to work with me. The companies that have done that well, they're killing it.
Yeah. Well, and that's another interesting point in that, 5-10 years ago, if you were in a hack and it was public, it like people were really scared about that. Their name, the bad publicity, the bad press, that kind of thing. It's so common now. I wonder how that's reduced people's response. Like we're constantly, Target released all of your personal information to, they were hacked and all of your personal information that was in your Target account is released to the internet. They have your name, your social security number, your credit card numbers, your blood type, like whatever. Right. And it happens so often. Here's a free credit monitoring thing and everybody has it. And it's almost like, it's just another one of the same things. And I wonder, you and I hear that and we're freaking out, but I wonder how I want to almost say normies, the non-cybersecurity nerds, that are just going about living their normal lives, how they don't necessarily understand what that means and the impact it could potentially have to them and, domino effect of things in their lives, their accounts, their kids, all the different things of how big of a deal some of these things are that hit the news and people are just like, whatever.
I mean, but here's the ironic part. Like you and I, we're cyber pros, been doing this decades, right? 42,000 hours of experience. I'm at the point where I'm just like, right? Like it used to be fear mongering. It used to be an element where people were truly like concerned and oh my God, what's going to happen to the stock price? Or am I going to lose customers? And the stock price takes a dip, but it almost always comes back. I don't know any cases where it didn't, right? And the thing is like, yes, everyone gets those credit monitoring pieces. How many people actually sign up? I was doing a tabletop for a large company. And, we're doing this tabletop and we're working through the breach scenario. Finally, we get to the point where it's like, listen, double exfiltration. They took terabytes of data and then, and they're like trying to quantify cost. And I'm like, well, you also have to provide, credit monitoring. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, what's it going to be? And they're doing the numbers. And let's just to make the math easy and the story simple, let's say it was $100,000 to provide all of the credit monitoring. Right. And I'm like, all right, well, it's going to be 100. And they're like, no. Statistically, only like 20% of people sign up for that. So it's going to be 20 grand, right? Like the vast majority of people don't actually take it. And let's be honest, do we need it anymore? Those services are free. Right. So like the reason why I love you brought this up is because, we think about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the CI triad. I won't speak for all your listeners. I won't speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. I always viewed those as equal pillars, right? I always viewed those as the three things that we as cyber professionals have to do. But the times have changed. Confidentiality is not really a thing. It's really not. Like if you think about what's happened to us culturally over the last 15 years, we've given up our data in exchange for free services. We happily give away all the information, our name, our birthday, all of our relatives, pictures of our kids to social media. And we do it gladly and we love it. And we share things out to the entire world with no concepts or semblance of like a concern for privacy. And we think people are going to be outraged because, part of their social security number was implicated in a breach that showed up on, a dark web forum a year ago. No one gives a shit anymore. The thing is, like, what I've realized is that CIA triad was not equal parts. And the parts that matter now are really availability. It's of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Integrity is critical. It's always going to be critical because we have to make sure no one's jacking the numbers, right? No one's messing with the data. They're not changing, your age on a system, or they're not changing numbers on a bank account either up or down, right, to commit fraud. So integrity is always going to be there. Availability is the new hotness. Right? If you think about it, like people just want services to be there and we want them to work. I want my life to be easy. I don't actually give a shit about my data. I know it's out there. Equifax was breached. Target was breached. Home Depot was breached. Like the list goes on. I'm sorry to pick on you all, but look, this is you, not me, right? So deal with it, right? But like the reality is like the data's out there. So like at this point, I think we as cyber professionals have to rethink this paradigm and refocus efforts on the things that matter. Now, I want to preface this because I can hear half of your listeners screaming at the steering wheel right now as they kind of commute home. Yes, there is an element of confidentiality. It hasn't gone away. I'm just thinking about this like from the perspective of consumers and the perspective of other elements, like to think about these as equal pillars now, that I think is the fundamental shift. There are still data sets that can't go out there. They'll move markets,
Sure.
right? If you start releasing things like non-public information, that's a bad day. SEC implications, right? You start losing things like military secrets, that's a bad day. Geopolitical implications. Like there is confidentiality there still. But this conversation has changed.
Yeah, it 100% has. You know, and that it's been that way in the OT space the entire time because we haven't really cared about confidentiality for the most part.
Interesting. Okay.
We really care more about availability. Now, obviously, Coca-Cola cares about the intellectual property of the the secret Coke formula, but you go to a power plant and you generate electricity the same at a power plant. Like they don't have a competitive edge because of their secret sauce and how they burn coal, right?
They don't have better uranium, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all right.
That's not it. There's no IP in that, right? Like they share all that information because it's a critical infrastructure. So that's not it. It's all about availability.
Yeah.
Obviously integrity, but absolutely skewed on the importance and the value statement on the availability side. And I agree with you. I think the consumer market is more that as well. Like I'm going to go to something that's reliable, even if like a prime example. So I use a password vault. Like again, we're in cybersecurity. We use password managers and password vaults. I used to use LastPass.
Yeah.
How many times did LastPass get hit?
Oh my God. All the time.
Like 10 times?
Right. Yeah. Right.
It was like 8 before I finally changed. I'm like, yeah, but I've got my own password on my thing and they're probably not going to get to my database and my database is stored locally. And like, it was like, okay. And then after like 8 times, I'm like, okay, obviously these guys are not going to change anything. They're going to continue doing this and I'm just playing with fire. So I moved it off to something else. But it just, even me in a cyber role, I've been doing this for, decades. And I was just like, is that big of a deal? I had top secret security clearance, for government clearance. And I worked in a power plant and I worked at nuclear facilities. So I had multiple clearances for different places. And during that time is when DHS was hacked. So all of my, everybody in the DHS thing that had security clearance, they have all of that information. Everything. So I'm just like, every time there's a thing, I'm like, there's no way it's worse than the one I had from DHS. So there's no way they could have more. I mean, I did a 500 question, psych evaluation to get badged for a nuclear badge, right?
And you passed.
They know.
Good for you,
I
man.
Somehow passed. I don't know exactly.
Nice.
Maybe they just were like, it's borderline. Yeah, we'll let him go.
Yeah, nice.
But it's crazy. Like it's amazing how much it shifted. And I think I may have told you guys this. My mother-in-law listens to my podcast, and she's a 7-year-old woman. She's not in technology. She was never in technology. She listens because she sees it's interesting to her, the guests that I bring on, the conversations that we have. But more and more people, just in your daily life, cyber is going to impact you in some way. It doesn't mean you have to do it for your job. It doesn't mean you have to be a cybersecurity professional. But I was on a webinar with a group of moms. While I was in RSA. So I was in San Francisco in my hotel room, and I was talking to a group of about 50 to 60 moms. And it was about how they need to be digitally protecting their family, and how, today kids as young as 8 is about the first time that they see pornographic material.
It's getting bad.
Terrifying to think about as a father of 3, right? So we have to have those conversations with our children a lot sooner than they had the conversation with you and I, probably, the birds and the breeze and all that kind of stuff, because they just have so much more access. And all of that to me is about, cybersecurity, digital security, availability. All those things are conversations, and we need to be having those at home, at work, in everything that we do. It's something that cyber needs to be part of the conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And like, this is the thing that I think most people don't understand. So like, I used to give this talk I would train up a bunch, like the next cohort of, they called them CDPs. I don't remember what it stood for, but it was like Development Professional Program, something like that, right? And like, these would be people who are just starting in the industry or people who just graduated college. And I was working for an org, they would spend 40 hours straight, like a whole week, like full on training folks. This is what this is about. This is how you do cybersecurity. These are the things we're concerned about. Here's what a log file looks like. This is what normalization is, parsing, like very in depth. That was great. A lot of the people that went through that program, they're huge, like industry, influencers now, CISOs or founders or whatever else, right? So it was very cool to kind of watch that happen. But one of the talks I would give when I was teaching these classes is I'd say, all right, I'll make up the numbers because they've changed. But, let's say, $100 billion a year of loss, right, occurs to some cyber element, whether it's fraud or whether it's ransom, extortion or whatever else, right? Let's pretend 50% of that gets written off because of insurance coverage, right? So there's, and then another 25% of that doesn't get paid out because if it was fraud, the money might have gotten pulled back or recovered. We're still at like $25 billion, a lot of money. And I would ask right. Oh, this is, we're throwing around the B word here, but no, this is it's probably low if I'm being honest, right? I'm making up these numbers for a fact, right? But like I would say, all right, so there's that much money that's out there that's going out to attackers that people are getting, recovering, and now have control over. And I would ask folks at this table, I'd be like, so what would you do with that money? Like, what are these attackers doing with the money? And I would inevitably get answers like, oh, they go on vacations, or they buy a yacht, or they buy sports cars, or they have, penthouses, or they save it, or they invest it. And part of that is right. Some of that is right. But the thing is, we were getting answers from people who are not evil, right? We were getting answers from good people, and those people were giving the good people answers. The vast majority of the money that's stolen and used from a cyber perspective is used for the terrible things you can't get bank loans for, like sex trafficking, like weapons trade, like paying suicide bombers, the families of those suicide bombers. Like those are the things where this money goes toward, because you can't walk into a Bank of America and be like, look, I need $100,000. I got to move weapons from this country to this country. I got to pay the guys off. Like, where do I sign the application? Right. So when you start to understand that the dark side of this thing, the dark side of what we do is funding the things that are the truly evil elements of our world. Well, it kind of changes perspective on what we do from a cyber perspective, right? Every time we're able to stop that, we're able to provide some protection to that small and medium-sized business that's going to fall victim to invoice fraud, or we're going to help, some company limit their fraud losses. Like, yes, are we helping shareholders? Are we keeping stock prices high? Are we making rich people richer? Sure. But we're also preventing that money from funneling to the things that are truly evil in this world.
Yeah, man. And I told the story on y'all's podcast about, how I was hit by a, phishing attack, or, basically somebody calling me. I think I've told the story on here as well, but kind of the bigger point is that I hear a lot of, well, why would they go after me? I'm a small, sporting goods store in this small town. Like, why would anybody want my stuff? And what people need to realize is it's just an opportunity. If they can, they will. Like they'll ransomware you, they'll phishing attack you, they'll try to steal money, they'll try to get, access. Maybe you have access to somebody else. Like, they don't care. These are not good people we're talking about, to your point. Like, there is a lot of criminal organizations that are out there. There's state sponsored ones. There's individual, old school mafia style, criminal organizations in other countries all around the world that we don't even have legal repercussions of. That's the other piece that's really scary is you can't call the police department. They'll be like, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, you call the FBI, maybe if it's big enough, maybe they'll get involved. There are some repercussions, but for the most part, there's a lot that just goes with no repercussions, with no resolution other than rebuild. That could be your personal finances. They can take out, your credit. They can take out loans, credit cards. They can take money out of your accounts. They can shut down your business. They can sell your house. Like, there's all of these scams that go in and fraud and cybersecurity theft and all these different things. Nobody is immune to it anymore. So we have to be that's why little simple things like password vaults and password managers and not using the same damn password across multiple sites is hard. As simple as that sounds, that one thing would probably stop a very large percentage. Now, does that mean that you're immune? No, because if you click the thing and you fill out the stuff, then they're going to get in and get your password vault too. But it at least helps in theory to slow it down, to stop the spread, to keep it isolated to one thing. Because, you know, if they have access to your email and your password, then they can get into your bank, and then they can get into, you know, the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then they're in your parent, like it just, the dominoes just fall so quickly. And then they're into your work. Like that's the other thing that people don't always think about is, where do you work? Right? Yeah, maybe they can't get, you know, well, you can't get blood from a turnip. Okay, maybe you don't have anything they can steal. But for them, $5, $10, $50, $100, because they're doing it at scale. They're doing it across to thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people, and there's zero overhead for them. They just keep banging away until they get, got one, got one.
It's all automated. Yep, exactly right. No, you're spot on, and you're right. And like, you know, I hear this a lot. Like, I don't have any money. Like, there's nothing that I'm like, you know, like a small business, right? Here's a great example of small business. All right, maybe not, but if they get control of your email, they can start doing business, you know, email fraud, right? Or business email compromise. They can now go out to the people that are supposed to pay you and redirect payments. And you really won't have anything. They don't have to steal anything from you, but they can use you as an opportunity. And that's true at the individual level as well. You know, coming back to like, you know, what you were talking about, like, you know, I'm sure your listeners know they're all cyber pros, but like, let's just reiterate, like this stuff goes deep. Like North Korea funded its entire nuclear program on cybercrime, right? Like the Russian crime syndicates effectively operate in Russia under safe harbor, which is why the trick used to be if you set your secondary keyboard language to Russian, you would avoid getting hit by those organizations. That's one of the first checks that their software did. They would check to see if there's a Russian language keyboard, that's it. Shut the whole thing down and move on. Because that was the ground rule. Like, yeah, you can operate wherever you want, just don't do it in Russia, right? Like there are major implications that come to this stuff. And I always try to, if I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second, I always try to get people to remember that there are real people on the other end of these things. These are not just bits and bytes. These are not just strings of text. There are real players in this game. And this is the game that we have to stay diligent about.
Yeah, and there's real victims as well, right? And
for sure,
you know, I've had a few folks, unfortunately, friends and family that have been greatly impacted financially, and they didn't have money either, right? We're talking about retired elderly people that continue, and they still believe it. They're giving away their money because they think it's like, oh well, if we just keep giving, I'm gonna get the return. They got hit. And they just don't see it. They don't want to admit it, right? And sometimes you got to cut bait. But it's hard. We grew up on this. We've been doing this for so long. You know, our kids' generation, the younger generations than us, you know, they've always had technology. But you know, the baby boomers and that generation haven't. So they're very susceptible to these. Some of them are better than others, obviously. It's a generality, but you know, obviously they didn't grow up with technology. You and I grew up, I can't speak for you. I grew up, you know, that Macintosh Plus back there was one of my computers. My first computer.
Amazing. That's cool.
Tandy TRS-80, a Trash 80. So, I mean, I remember, you know, AOL and dial-up and Juno email and, you know, all the things. So, I mean, technology's kind of been part of me. I remember time before the internet. I remember the internet, and I remember, you know, everything since. So I've kind of grown through all of those changes. So change to us to me, and it has been, I don't know, simpler, I guess. But my wife is funny. Like she can't tell the difference between, you know, one version of an iPhone and the next. Like she doesn't know the new features that come out. I'm like, I'll show her something. She's like, how'd you know that? I'm like, I don't know. I just do.
Right. And we still get caught, right? Like this is the thing. Like I've trained my wife up on some of this stuff. And like what I've told her is I'm like, if you ever find yourself and you have to like, you causes pause. You're like, what is this? Stop. That's it. Like, listen to that spidey sense, right? Because if you're just like, if you don't understand, stop, call me, double check, don't click links, go, like if it's coming from, let's say, I don't know, credit card, go directly to the site, log in, don't like, and like, these are the things that, you know, you and I and our people in our cohort have figured out and like trained ourselves to do. But like, to your point, not everyone knows this stuff. And that's why these scams keep working. That's why victims keep growing.
Yep. Yeah. And it's going to get worse. Right. It is a fishing hole that they have learned, and they're getting better with it. And AI tools will help them be more efficient with it. There's so much that we can glean from. I mean, I can write outreach for, let's say that I wanted to get Paul on my podcast. I can find Paul's email. I can find Paul's LinkedIn, maybe his Facebook or Instagram, and I can give that to, let's say, ChatGPT, and say, hey, I want to outreach to Paul and have him come on to my podcast, Protect It All. I want you to look at what you can find on him, make it personable, make it something that he would be interested in talking about, something that would show value to him. And in 5 seconds, it goes and it finds all those places, the information that it can, and it gleans a really good introductory outreach, whether I send that on LinkedIn or I send you an email or I send it through Facebook or Instagram. But it can glean quite a bit of information just on the things that it searches in a few seconds off of our Facebooks or whatever. Right. And, and when we go out of town, how many people are checking in at the airport? And then we check in when we're out of town, and we check in, at the remote destination, or, our kids put their GPS tracker on and their friends are tracking them as well. And how many, there's just all of these things that we're being attacked from all these different directions. And we don't all even have an understanding of where the risks are and how to protect it. And it's the same way in the business world, right? We have all these new things and we add this new tool, but we don't think about that I just added 5 vulnerabilities when I implemented that thing that I wasn't thinking.
More than that. Yeah. Oh, more like, think about how deep this goes, right? Like, here's the other thing. You bring up, AI and the outreach thing. Awesome, by the way. It would probably not recommend you lead with shampoo for me, but it may very well say something about, talk about Woodford. I had to shave my beard. I was getting too much. I couldn't keep up with, the famous Aaron over here. But like the AI stuff is crazy. We talked about privacy, or we talked about like the data we give away. I randomly did an experiment. So I pay for the private instance of ChatGPT, right? Because I use it for business. I want to make sure it's not training models. Like, try to do the right thing. And it keeps the chat history, and it does that for everyone. It does it on the free version too, right? But I was like, all right, let me do a little experiment. Let me have some fun. I wrote a prompt one night. I was like, hey, we've been talking for a year now, right? I've asked you a bunch of things. You've helped me with a lot of, whatever, X, Y, or Z. I was like, I want you to go back through the chat history, and I want you to write a profile about me. Who am I? What do I believe in, right? What is it that I do? And man, if this thing wasn't 85% spot on, and I'm not even talking about like, the normal things, like, it knew I was a cybersecurity professional. It knew like, the elements of my business that I've pasted in there, but it made inferences on like personal beliefs, religion. It made inferences on like, my childhood. Like there were some wild things that I was able to figure out. And this thing had me pegged 85%. So like, yeah, that's a vulnerability. Like it knows these things, right? And like, you talk about, we add new tech. Like one of the things I'm worried about, man, is like AI is, as much as it's going to be a powerhouse, as much as it is a transformative tech in our space and in the world, right? This is the next big thing. It's just as dangerous. It's just as dangerous.
The bad guys got it too. And they don't have, just like you talked about earlier with your example of what are they spending the money on? Those bad guys don't have the same morals or, foundational beliefs that good people, relatively good people, I pay my taxes. I stop at stop signs. I help old ladies cross the street type of thing. They don't have those concerns, right? They are looking at what can I do to take advantage and get access to the thing that I want, and I don't care the outcome or the consequence, right? In fact, I want the outcome and I want the consequence. So we have the ability to use AI and a lot of these tools to benefit humanity, to benefit, streamline our processes, find gaps in our security policies and procedures. We have a custom auto tabletop process that we use that uses AI. Amazing. It's all offline, but it's really cool because you can make it. We did one, and it was the we were attacking the Death Star. So the rebels were attacking the Death Star, and it was all using cybersecurity, and it was cool. Using an actual incident response plan. But we were just, it was like
you're changing the characters,
Dungeons and Dragons,
right?
right?
Yeah, super cool.
But using Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica or, you know, Star Trek, whatever your thing is, you can make it fun. You can also gamify it. Like, so there's a lot of good that comes from it. But think about a bad actor that can take that same stuff and say, hey, this is what I found out about this company. These are, you know, I went to Shodan and this is what I found publicly facing for them. These are their IP spaces. And how can they use that to get away in? And it doesn't have to be a technical in. As we know, what is the biggest risk in our environments? People, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
Always. Every time. I mean, if there were no people, there'd be no problems, right? But there'd
correct.
Also be no people. So, right. No, it you know, here's the thing, like, you triggered on something for me, because like this is part of the other issue of what it means to be a cyber defender is it's not a fair game. The game's rigged, man. Like these, you know, the cyber criminals that we're up against are well funded and they have no rules. We have change control. We have systems we can't touch. We have to make sure we have other priorities. We have to support the business. Like there's all these other things we have to do. They have one mission. Compromise. That's it. That's their mission. Whatever their benefit they're after, monetization, data theft, whatever, like their mission is compromise. Our mission is defend. As long as it's not between these, you know, these freeze periods, and as long as you put in the proper paperwork, and as long as you're not going to cause any business impact, and also make sure you partner with these business units. Also, don't forget to let folks know about the thing that you have to do. And oh my God, we have to change the website. Now, hold on, I'm going to need at least 3 weeks review. Like, these are all the stumbling blocks we have to deal with. And like the reality is, like, you know, I've talked about this before. You think about game theory and the types of games that are out there, right? And there's the finite game, the games that have a clear end. And then there's the infinite game, the game that you just keep playing until you fall over, right? Defenders, we're playing the infinite game. We don't stop. Cyber doesn't end. We have to keep going. Cyber criminals, they're playing the finite game. They have an end. They either move on because they couldn't compromise, or they win, they monetize in some way. But those rules are completely different. So it gets portrayed as this cat and mouse game or this chess game, but it's not. We're in totally different realms, and we have to like find that sliver in the Venn diagram where we have a benefit to, in some cases, not even properly defend an organization, just get the attacker to move on. Find an easier target. I tell my clients that I'm like, look, your goal is not to be perfect. Your goal is to be good enough that an attacker's like, fuck this, I'm out. There's an easier one out there. I'm moving on, you know?
Well, and I think I see it a lot as well. And it's less about, probably 10 years ago, at least from my perspective, it was all about, I'm going to make it really hard to get in. I'm going to be so impossible. We're never going to be hacked. I think it's shifted over now. Like, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So what else can I do? Now, obviously I need to remediate. I need to, you know, still do my protections there, but I also have to focus on what happens. Worst case scenario, they get in and they lock my stuff down. Can I recover? And what does that recovery look like? How quickly can I recover? And how, you know, what does that recovery process look like? Right. So the sooner that we start understanding, cyber is about risk. Right? It's about mitigating risk. Just like you talked about on the insurance policy, people are okay with paying money and hoping it never happens. And that's what cyber is, right? It's really mitigating my risk about something that hopefully never happens. I hope that nobody ever hacks a nuclear power plant and causes a, you know, meltdown. I really hope that never happens. There's a reason why we have so many controls that redundant, triple redundant systems to make sure that type of thing doesn't happen. Right. Same thing in, you know, in our fighting forces and submarines and all the things. Like, we have all these protections for all these reasons. And it's about, you know, that old motto of defense in depth. Right. So it's not just about keeping the bad guys out of my network. I always assumed they are already in. I always assumed corporate network was compromised.
Yeah.
It was already done. Right.
Yep.
I don't trust it. I don't trust any other network other than a device that I specifically configure and I own. And every other device I assume is bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like that, I mean, that's the change in the framework is it is not if, it's when, and it's being comfortable being uncomfortable. And the reality is can you minimize that blast radius? all right, like, if a workstation gets popped, yeah, it sucks. Like they got in, someone clicked the wrong thing. Cool. But could we contain it to that? Or was the attacker able to dump creds and pivot and set a foothold on a server or a cloud PC that doesn't turn off? Right. And then were they able to like enumerate the network and then figure out like, where the data stores were and then start exfiltration over SOX proxies or encrypted channels? Like it keeps going, like it doesn't stop. So if you can minimize that blast radius, that's a win. If you can make your controls layered enough that even if something fails, the next control kicks in, that's a win, right? This is about that long game.
Well, it brings up a funny story. I think I was telling somebody at RSA, I did an assessment at this power plant one time, and we did scanning on devices. They were having some problems. It wasn't just a random red team or a pen test. So we pen tested, but we were also doing asset level investigation because there was just something hinky going on. And we weren't exactly sure what. Come to find out, which had nothing to do with the original problem they had. But as we were doing these scans, we found Stuxnet in their environment, sitting on their devices, just
dormant.
sitting there.
Yeah, sure.
Just dormant.
Yeah,
Now,
of course.
The cool thing is Stuxnet was not dangerous to them because they didn't have the targeted devices that Stuxnet
they
works on.
They weren't located in Iran, right? Like, yeah, exactly.
And it wasn't an Iranian, centrifuge and all the things. So it really, it didn't even have Siemens equipment in there. So there really wasn't any risk to it. But still, it's not something good we want on the environment. But there's a prime example. What did they want to do? The site said, yeah, we'll wait till outage and we'll rebuild the systems in then. Right. We didn't rip them out. We didn't, rebuild the new ones, anything like that. So we left them with a documented, hey, you guys have Stuxnet running in your environment. They're like, yeah, we're good. And they're right. That was the right decision. Like they didn't need to shut down the plant because Stuxnet was running or there dormant because the risk was super low, like almost zero, not zero. It's never zero, but zero, it was really, really low. So they made a decision to move and, we came back and during their outage and, we wiped it out and cleaned it up and all that kind of stuff. But again, that's the kind of conversations we have in these spaces. It's not just all about having the latest, greatest, most capable, all the things, because that availability is more important. And then the other thing that's not on that CIA triad that needs to be there is that dollar sign. Right. Because availability is important, but so is the business. Like I can put $1 million cyber program at a site that only makes $100,000 a year.
Right.
But why would I do that?
Yeah. And this is the thing that
then I don't make money.
Well, this is exactly the thing that actually dilutes like a cyber professional's clout, right? And like, what I would say to anyone listening, especially if you're early in your career, you're kind of just budding and you're trying to learn, like learn the business, figure out what the business is doing that you're actually trying to protect. Because if you can reconcile that story, if you know that this is how the business operates, this is how they make money, and now I can layer in how I'm going to defend it that aligns with those business goals, you're going to be infinitely more successful. Right. Because to your point, like these are not zero sum games. This is not like, on or off. Like there are levels of risk that are acceptable that the business does have appetite to. Now, it's your job to coach them, right? Coach them into what the appropriate risks are and are not, right? This is not roll the dice. Like we'll see how it goes. But the reality is like there is an element of understanding what those tolerances are and applying those tolerances in the appropriate way.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the same in all things that we do in business, right? We're constantly making that decision and analyzing. And to your point, like, I talk to a lot of cyber folks that are in cyber and, I think I'm going to go get a master's in cyber. I'm going to go get this or that. And I'm not, again, talking anything negatively about that. Sure. But the biggest question I have is, okay, you're already in cyber. You already have a degree or certification, or you've already got the job. What is the thing that would benefit you the most? More than likely, usually that is something else, a different set of skills that you don't currently possess. Like maybe you know 80% or you're, you have your bachelor's or whatever, and that got you in the door. How much more benefit do you think maybe a business degree or, finance or something like that, business acumen? Like that's the thing, in my career, I started out my career in the technology hands-on, I started out as an engineer, going to engineering school, electrical engineering, and really pivoted into this technology space. But all those years, I hit this limit by being hands-on keyboard until I got to a place where I was like actually doing business stuff. And obviously at EY, when I was there, I had a lot of different conversations and it really opened my eyes. But even before that, at the previous company, like we did this thing called Leadership Circle, where they really came in and they brought in the leaders, the future leaders of the space, and they taught us public speaking, and we did book reports, and we did use cases, and we did business justifications,
cases. Yeah,
absolutely right. We were doing all these things, and at first I was like, this is stupid, I don't want to do this, I don't understand. But man, it really ended up opening my eyes and obviously changed the trajectory of my career from, going to EY, being senior manager, CTO of a software company. Like I never imagined, yes, I was still very technical, but without that business side and that business acumen, I would have never been valid or, any good in any of those other roles. Would have never been considered for a CTO role just from my technical skill sets. Cause you need a lot more than technology to be able to get to those C-suite levels, and a CISO or any of that type of stuff. You really have to understand the business, before, the technology is important, but the business is as important, if not more, especially at those higher roles.
Oh yeah. I talk about this all the time. It's about storytelling. If you want to be a good storyteller, you got to understand the story, right? You have to be able to speak the same language as the people you're telling the story to. Like one of my favorite stories is, I was running security operations, large Fortune 500 financial, and it's Christmas Eve. I shit you not. It's Christmas Eve. Get a call. It's like 7:00. Family sitting down for Christmas dinner. And, it's like, hey, we have a pretty critical cross-site scripting vulnerability on the main site. We see evidence the attacker is testing it. Like we gotta spin up a P1 right now. All right, can't be mad. This is what I signed up for, right? So get on a call, right? Spin up a bridge, do what we gotta do, and get on. And you start paging people out, and they're pissed, of course, right? Because that's not what they signed up for. They didn't sign up to leave Christmas dinner. And then, they're just like, well, we're not doing this. I'm like, no, here's our options. We gotta disable this part of the site, take away the search box. We gotta change this, or we gotta patch that, or change the web server, or whatever. Like there was a bunch of different options, a couple levers we could have pulled. And they're like, no, we're not doing any of this. You kidding me? It's Christmas Eve. We don't have any changes. 14-day waiting period, blah, blah, blah. And like, at first I was being like the shitty cyber guy. I was like, no, we have cross-site scripting. We have to do a patch now. Or listen to me. I'm smart. Right. And that didn't work. Right. So finally I had to pull back. I had to kind of swallow my pride and take a step back. I'm like, let's just tell the story. Right. And a very simple shift in the tone was, hey, do you know how attackers use this? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, so we have a cross-site scripting vulnerability on our site. Do you know what the attacker is going to do with that? And they're like, no. I was like, okay, so here's how they're going to weaponize this particular thing. This search box has a vulnerability in it. So if you put in like a very particular code, what'll happen is it'll put a pop-up on the screen that'll be from our site, and they can make the pop-up say whatever they want. So what they're going to do is they're going to craft phishing emails that are going to have a link that is going to link back to our site, put a piece of code into that search box, and it's going to cause our site to pop up a box to our customers that says your account has been compromised. Please click here to verify. And they're going to harvest credentials and commit fraud. Oh yeah, you're right. We probably got to take that search box down, right? Like once you put it into a simple communication so that people can speak the same language and tell that same story, that becomes impactful. They made the tactical change. We didn't shut any web servers down. They did the tactical change. And then, a week later, the whole thing was fixed and everything was up and running. But it's about telling that story. It's about using those skills of being able to communicate with other people in the business, to your point, right? And then have that to propagate what your mission is, which is defense.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a mentor tell me during that leadership circle thing, he one of the things that really stuck with me was all business is a people business. He's like, sure. I don't care if you're the janitor or the CEO, yeah. Right? You have to be able to work through people, with people, not run through them. But like, if you can't convince the person sitting across from you that this needs to be done, it doesn't matter that you're the smartest person in the room. Like being intelligent and having a high IQ and being able to get something done are not necessarily the same thing. I'd take somebody that has that high EQ emotional, information, right? And that can read a room and connect with people. And I'm not saying that the high IQ person is not valid. I'm just saying being the smartest guy at the firewall is a great thing, but it's only going to get you so far. Right. You still need someone. If you can't do it, somebody else is going to have to do it. And the bad thing for you is they're going to get more light shined on them because they're the ones having those conversations. And it's why salespeople get paid so well. It's why that, salespeople are usually the ones that turn into CFOs, that turn into CEOs and all these different higher roles. And, even in CISO roles, you look at those people, and yes, many of them come from technology backgrounds, but almost all of them, the reason they got where they are is because they stepped outside of just that technical track and added these other skill sets where they were lacking in public speaking, in, being able to win friends and influence people, being able to sell and pitch a story, public speaking. Cause if you're at that role, you're talking in front of the board, you're talking, to regulatory agencies, you're talking to who knows whom. And you have to be able to pitch your idea, and get that across, or that thing, the hacker would have got it on Christmas Eve and nobody would have, and then they'd have been screaming at you because you didn't fix it. And all because, not because you didn't know how, but because you couldn't not push them, not bully them, but win them over so that they're willing to do the work and understand. People want to be heard. They don't want to be beat over the head. They don't want to be forced to do things. When you bring them along with you instead of trying to force them, it's like, dragging a dog as opposed to a well-trained dog that just walks beside you. There's a big difference between the level of effort it takes to walk a dog between those two animals.
Yeah, you're 100% right. The best leaders are the leaders who can get people to follow them because those people want to, not because those people have to, right? If you can align mission and if you can align purpose with what you're trying to do, you can move mountains, right? And that's a powerful, powerful thing. And, I'm sure there's definitely some fraction of folks that are listening to this that are still hands on keyboards, right? Pulling packets apart. And that's amazing. Those are amazing skill sets. But don't forget about the other side of this, the ability to communicate, the ability to tell that story, the ability to get people to follow you because they want to. Those are the things that are going to really propel change in your organization and get things that you want done. Right? Because that's the other thing we struggle with. We know how to defend the place. We just got to get it done. We just got to figure out how to get it done now, right? That's the other hard part.
Yeah. Most of my career, especially in the later part of my career, the reason I was successful is that exact skill set, being able to win over people to be willing to do what needed to be done in the time frame and the way, all that kind of thing. It wasn't a technical difficulty. That wasn't the differentiation. Yes, I'm smart. Yes, the hard hats and my experience in the OT space, all those things buy me credibility. But even with that, it wasn't enough. I had to win those folks over and make sure that they were brought along. And that is priceless in the marketplace. And no matter what you're doing, so the new folks that are out there that maybe you're just now getting into cyber, or you're fairly new to your point, they're hands on keyboard. For every 5 technical classes or trainings that you take a non-technical one. Take one in business. Take one in public speaking.
Learn something fun.
Do something else that's outside of your current capacity and current skill set that will also help you in your career trajectory, because you will differentiate yourselves from your peers very fast. Everybody can be taking the technical stuff. When you ask hey, I'd like to go do public speaking, you're going to start being noticed.
Absolutely. Man, so what a good conversation.
We kind of went all over the place with it. So my wrap up question is always the same. I warned you about it, but all that we talked about, maybe some of this, we can bring it back around, but next 5 to 10 years, what's one thing coming up over the horizon that's maybe concerning, and maybe one thing that's exciting that you see in the cyberspace?
Yeah, you did warn me, so I appreciate that. Although I think I would have come up with the same answer anyway, because it has been on my brain a lot lately. And the things that I'm going to call out are both concerning and exciting. So it's definitely AI, and I love it. I love it. It's amazing. We joke on my podcast, right? Because it comes up every damn conversation. I'm like, oh, again, we talk about it again. But the reality is this is the transformative tech, right? This is, however long ago the internet came out and it transformed the world, and then search came out and it transformed the world, right? Like, this is the next thing. And for as much benefit as it's providing, I'm very concerned. And I'm actually not concerned for the things that you and maybe the others would think. Like, yeah, the attackers are going to exploit it. It's going to get used to weaponize stuff. I get that. I'm actually more worried for society. I think it's going to make us lazy, right? I think unless people make a concerted effort to maintain critical thinking and really focus on building skills like writing skills, or even just like, pulling things together that you would have had to think about before, that now it's just easy to just write a prompt and it gets done. Like, over time, that's going to have a negative impact on our ability to think about things critically and to write and to have those skills like writing, right? Or the ability to, like, even just think about things in a way that you're not just taking for granted what's being presented to you. So that's the thing that I'm a little worried about. I hope that folks realize that this is a tool. It's not meant to replace thought process. It's not meant to, copy and paste things and pop them into whatever you're using it for. Like, there's an element of review and critical thinking that has to stay in place. And I'm really concerned that this is so easy that that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, it's a muscle that, especially the younger generation, as they're coming up, I've got an 11-year-old as my youngest. I can imagine how difficult different it's going to be for him and his peers, as it was for you and I, again, coming up. I remember a time before the internet. So I've had to, I saw a meme yesterday, and it was like, why ask a Gen X, or you wonder why a Gen Xer is so angry. We had to transfer our music from records to cassettes, from cassettes to CDs, from CDs to DVDs, from DVDs to MP3s. And now we have to pay for it on streaming.
Right. Yeah, no, it's like, this is the speed of the world. We've seen
all of those things, right? And I remember even my parents or my dad had an 8-track player. So my son just got a truck, and he hasn't replaced the radio in it. And it's a 2004 vehicle, and it has a 6-disc CD changer in it. And
that was the hotness of the time, man.
Yeah. It doesn't have an aux connector. It doesn't have any way to plug anything in. So he was kind of annoyed having to listen to the radio. And my wife found my old CD collection, and he is just loving it, because he's listening to, my mixed CDs and, Metallica and all these different things. Yeah. And he's loving it because he's got a 6-disc CD changer in his dash. And I'm like, gosh, I haven't even played a CD, and I can't remember how long.
I don't think I've seen a CD in years. So, like, it's interesting because, like, that leads me to the thing that I'm most excited about, right? And the thing I'm most excited about now is quantum computing. Like, I geek out on quantum all the time. And I know that the conversation around cyber is very much about, like, well, it's going to break RSA encryption and all the passwords are going to be exposed. And that's what everyone's worried about. But I'm on the other side of this thing, man. I think to open up quantum computing to add an entire different dimension of computing and the processing power that comes with, we're going to be able to do some amazing shit, right? Like, the thing I'm waiting for over the next 5 to 10 years is just for it to get smaller, because that's what's coming, right? If you think about the first IBM computer that was delivered in the 50s or 60s or 70s, I forget what decade, that thing showed up on a freaking flatbed truck, and they had to take a portion of a brick wall out of a building to put it into the room, right? Well, we carry around computers that are tens of thousands times more powerful than that thing in our pocket every single day. That's what's going to happen with quantum. They're figuring out cooling. They're figuring out power, right? Like, it's going to become accessible. And when it becomes accessible, all the things that we worry about because the processing is too much, or there's too much data and we can't munch through the data, these things are going to not even think twice about it. It's a whole different way to compute data. It's a whole different way to think about things. And it's going to open up a world of possibilities. And we'll see things that truly only existed in the movies in the next 5 to 10 years, for sure.
I agree. It's exciting. And to your point, there's always a yin and a yang. There's a good and a bad on both sides of the coin. It's the same coin though, right? You can't have, the good without the bad. You can't have the bad without the good. So we have to know those things. Obviously, encryption is going to be broken just like that, which means we'll have to build new capabilities, et cetera. But to your point, like confidentiality, other than, some of those examples that you gave and a few others, we aren't as worried about those things. Again, everybody knows there's entire products that go out there and find your information on the dark
Data
web.
brokers,
And man, I mean, it's there. Like if you don't believe it, search for your name, like yellowpages.com, which it's funny they even call it that because most people don't even know what the hell yellow pages are anymore.
I didn't think about that. That's hilarious, right? What's a yellow page? Why do they, that's a weird company name. Why did they come up with that? That's so strange.
The days of the big ass books being delivered to your door once a year and just dropped off on your front porch so that you could find the pizza place and the phone number to the pizza place, because that's what we used to have to do, people. And then you could beat someone with it.
All right. So for the younger generation, that's why so many companies would be called like AAA. Right?
Correct.
AA this or AA that, because they wanted the first listing in the yellow pages, which was listed alphabetically. Doesn't matter now, right? There's no alphabetical listing, but that's why if you look back, like a lot of these companies had A names and it was A
AAA bail bondsman.
That's right. It was all because of the phone book. Oh man. I'm going to geek out all night thinking about this shit.
Well, and so that, like, I remember, this is complete tangent and then we can wrap up, but I remember in kindergarten, they put us in order of our first name, and I'm Aaron, right? So I'm always very first. And then I think it was like second grade, they transitioned from first name to last name, and I'm Crow. So I was still close to the front, but there were people that were ahead of me, and I did not like that because I liked being first. And now I'm not first. Like, wait, who voted to change this? And I was so not included because I used to be first, and now I'm not.
That's hilarious. No, these are the things in life that happen, and like we just keep the names and culturally they get adopted. It's incredible stuff. Well, Aaron, 100%. Thank you so much. This has been a blast. I appreciate you hosting me for an hour. I appreciate you letting me bullshit with you, and hopefully your listeners had some fun and we got some stuff out of it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you taking the time. Tell everybody how to find your podcast and where to listen to it, all the things.
Oh my God. I'm the worst at this. All right. So Cyber After Hours. I'm pretty sure if you Google it, you'll find it. We're on all the major podcast outlets, right? Wherever podcasts are sold. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. So check us out. Cyber After Hours is myself and Evan. The thing with that podcast is we have no idea what we're going to talk about, right? That's why I was kind of psyched to come on here and not have a topic, right? Just kind of see where the world takes us. And the way that works is sometimes we have a guest, right? Aaron, you were on an episode. Sometimes we don't, but every single time we pull a random cyber topic out of the fishbowl, and that's what we're talking about. Sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes we're making a bunch of shit up, but every time it's fun. So appreciate you, appreciate your listeners, and go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just gonna say, and all the while they're drinking bourbon, and or whatever whatever spirits they happen to have in their glass. It was a lot of fun. So definitely check out that. I'll make sure to put it in the show notes links, so you can go check those guys out. Really great content, guys. We talked about this on the podcast when I was on there. It's like I don't see this. I want more people doing this, having these conversations. Yeah. Everybody needs to hear these things. I don't see my friend Paul and Evan as competition. I see it as more value and more volume out there, right? So I want to lift these guys up. They do a great job. I had a blast being on their podcast. Had a blast today, Paul. So had a blast. Evan was on my podcast as well. So love getting that message out and supporting good people in the space, and definitely put all the links out there. So thank you again for your time today. Great job today. I really appreciate it, sir. And until next time.
Appreciate you, pal. Take care.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for joining us on Protect It All, where we explore the crossroads of IT and OT cybersecurity. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to stay ahead in this ever-evolving field. Until next time.